Hello, folks. Dustin Zarni here. Welcome to Commissioner in a Car. It is July 22nd, Tuesday, July 22nd, and this is we have a new presumptive nominee edition. Actually, it's Tuesday, July 23rd. What are days nowadays? Dates are irrelevant because news is moving so fast. The last I talked to you on a Commissioner Car was last week, and of course, President Biden was staying in the race, and we were really kind of talking about the RNC convention, and J.D. Vance had just been nominated as the vice president nominee for Donald Trump, and then what a difference a week makes, and actually really 5 days, because it was Sunday when this all went down, where President Biden announced in a kind of a surprise announcement, although it was rumored, for a couple of days that sometime this weekend there might be a decision made. Although those rumors have been coming for a while, so I think a lot of us, including myself, kind of discounted it until we saw it. And then on Sunday, President Biden announced in a letter that he was not going to seek the nomination from the Democratic Party later this month, and that he endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris, I need to get this right. I think sometimes, that name does not really flow off the tongue, at least for me. For years I thought it was Kamala, but I understand it's Kamala. And I'm going to be very, very conscious of that going forward, because in 24 hours, not only did she reach enough delegates by Monday night to be the new presumptive nominee, but she received the endorsement of every governor, almost every senator, almost every Democratic House of Representatives, all of the major rivals that were thought to might seek this open seat if it became, and it was an open seat, and I'll get to that in a second. But she locked this up real quickly. Not only that, $100 million went into the campaign. This on top of the $91 million on hand that was already in the campaign that is legally being transferred over, and I'll go into that in a second as well. That has put not only Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, as the presumptive nominee, but in an incredibly strong position heading in to the Democratic National Convention later this month, although related in the month of August, although in the beginning of August, and I'll get into that. I got a lot of things I'm going to get into this podcast. There will be a roll call earlier in August as well, and why that will be. So, we are seeing just something we've never seen before. We've never seen a president who has served only one term decide not to seek his first re-election. And while President Truman and President Lyndon Baines Johnson both decided not to seek an election where they were eligible to run, that was actually their third term that they were not seeking, because both of them, their first term took place with the deaths of Kennedy and Roosevelt. So they actually did seek one re-election, technically a re-election. Even though they weren't elected the first time, they were elected through through another sitting president, and then ascended. They did seek a re-election, their first re-election that they could. They just didn't seek their second. So we've never really seen a sitting president turn down a re-election campaign, his first chance at re-election while in the White House. We've just not seen that. And it is a selfless thing. President Biden doing this, understanding that he was not in the best position to beat Donald Trump. I still believe he could have. But he and others have decided that it was best to pass the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris, or Kamala. I'm going to have trouble with this. I'm going to just say Vice President Harris. That is going to be what that is just, it's going to go down in the history books as one of the most selfless things that a person has ever done, especially if Vice President Harris becomes President Harris and beats Donald Trump this election. So it's quite amazing, and I'm glad that not only did he do that, but he did it while endorsing Vice President Harris. It shows a tremendous amount of loyalty, the same amount of loyalty that she showed to him, and you really need to see. There's a lot of good comments in the comment section. My friend Justin Polly from the town of Onondaga Democrats, he going back in the history book, says that Rutherford B. Hayes did a one-term pledge in 1876 and did not run again in 1880. So that's the last time that's happened. Only 144 years ago. So I learned something on my podcast today too. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. And the town of Onondaga Democrats, ably led by Justin Polly. Anyways, so so I think it's going to go down as one of the most selfless acts that a president has ever done. So now, there's been a lot of talk, mostly by Speaker Johnson and former President Trump, that they're going to sue to keep Kamala off the ballot. That is impossible. I was on Spectrum News last night. I've been on a issue 1 letter with election experts from across the country. There's all kinds of legal analysis here that this was done properly. People have to understand that the conventions are the nominating platforms. You are electing, during the primaries, delegates to the convention. Those delegates are pledged by party rules to vote for a certain candidate unless they remove themselves from the ballot. Just because President Biden happened to be in the lead of those delegates doesn't mean that he can't remove himself from the ballot, as anybody who is in second or third place can remove themselves and free up their delegates. By doing so, those delegates are free to pledge their loyalty to whoever they want. And they've all pledged their loyalty to Kamala Harris. Thank you, David, for that good phonetic spelling in the comments there. Kamala. And that's going to help me a lot. So those delegates have now all come out and pledged support. Over 2,500 at this point, needing only 1,900 to get the nomination. Kamala Harris is now the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party. The second time in 3 cycles that the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party is a woman. The first time the presumptive nominee of any major party is an African-American woman or a woman of Indian heritage. She shares both. It is the first time that we've seen this happen after the primary system. This is different than Rutherford B. Hayes' situation, because President Biden did go through the primary and there was 14 million votes. However, the votes that were cast for President Biden, everybody who knew that they were casting those votes for Kamala Harris to be VP, who would take over in the case of Biden couldn't continue, and that's exactly what's happening here. And we're not seeing, from the immediate reaction of the Democrats, that they are upset with this. In fact, we're seeing enthusiasm I've never seen in my party. Not since 2008. Not since the September and October of 2008. So it is a unified party like I've never seen going into a Democratic convention, or never seen the likes of since, I would say, since the Clinton re-election in 1996, but possibly possibly long before that as well. So maybe the Kennedy elections in the 60s, do we ever seen such an immediate and rallying around a particular candidate by the Democrats. That doesn't mean she's going to win. I'm clear-eyed about this. I think we're going to see some bumps and pulls for her, but that may not last. I think she has a good shot at owning the rest of the month of August, or the rest of the month of July and the whole month of August until we get to Labor Day. We could put her in a good position going into the fall election. But this is still going to be a close race, and it's going to be a race that every vote will have to count. There's a comment in the comment section from my friend David Harding about the virtual roll call, and that's what I wanted to get into next. Because though the Democratic Convention starts on August 22nd, that doesn't mean that that's the first time that we're going to see the roll call vote that will officially nominate Kamala Harris. That will probably happen at the beginning of August. They've already said that they are planning to do so. By they, I mean the Democratic National Committee. Now, they've been saying this since May. And I've gone over this before in the podcast and in posting, but the reason they're doing this is because there's an Ohio ballot deadline that is August 7th, that if we don't have our nominee in place, even though the Ohio Republicans have passed a law saying that they moved it to September 1st, they've also didn't make that law effective till September 1st. There's a lot of legal question about whether the Ohio Republicans can play hijinks again, or the Democrats or some other group can sue to try to keep the Democratic nominee off the ballot in Ohio and a few other places as well. So they're going to have that virtual roll call in early August, especially now that we see that there is absolutely no opposition to Kamala Harris's nomination. David, thank you so much for that great phonetic spelling, because it's really, I think it's already started helping. Kamala. And she's going to be a household name, of course. She already is. Accomplished. I actually supported her in 2020 before she dropped out. So this is actually something I'm very happy with. Of course, I supported President Biden, too, and I think he's one of the most accomplished presidents of my lifetime. But that being said, we are where we are. We have to beat Donald Trump, and he's a danger to the democracy, and he is going to go down as a hero. Or Donald Trump, Biden's going to go down as a hero, but Donald Trump has to go down in this election. So now we'll have that virtual roll call. And again, I know that some conservatives, another question in the chat, some conservatives are out there saying that they're going to be able to knock Kamala off the ballot. They're really out there. They're in birtherism too now. They're saying that because both of her parents were not citizens, that she's not a citizen. Well, she was born in the United States. She's a citizen. That's called birthright citizenship. It is the law of the land. And I believe they've tried this before, and they've lost many times in court about these kind of things. And also, it's important to note that she was also vice president for the last 4 years. So in the qualification to be vice president, you have to be able to assume all the duties of president, and thus citizenship is one of those assumptions. So by practice and by precedent, she's eligible to be president and eligible to run for president. Because the convention is the ballot access method, until the convention is done or the virtual roll call is done, the certification hasn't been turned in. So there is no nominee, only presumptive nominees. No ballots have been printed. No boards of elections are going to be inconvenienced by this. And with 105 days until the election, there's plenty of time for this change to be made. And then the final avenue of legal attack is the $91 million that President Biden and Harris had in their account. Now, that account, that Presidential Election Committee had both President Biden and Kamala Harris's name on the paperwork when filed. And it is, the Campaign Legal Center came out with an opinion. Several FEC commissioners have come out and said it's absolutely able to transfer that money to Kamala Harris. They may not have been able to transfer that money to anybody else, or transfer the staff, or transfer the infrastructure that's on the ground, because their name isn't on that paperwork. But Kamala Harris's is. So whoever then she will put on the paperwork when she chooses her vice president, they will be able to spend that money, plus all the money that they've raised since Sunday, which they did change the paperwork on Sunday to make it the Harris for president campaign as opposed to the Biden for president campaign. Again, remember, both names were on there. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were on there on the candidates who were benefiting from that committee. And thus, it's easy to make Harris the top candidate. So that money is going to be transferred. I do expect ridiculous, frivolous legal challenges. I expect them to be knocked out of court. Yes, I understand the fear of a rogue Supreme Court who has taken into account many, many wild theories of law. I don't even think that I probably should knock on wood on this, but I don't think they would go so far as to force a candidate to run or strip them of the money that they have to run before an election. So I think it'll be very hard for this to get up to the Supreme Court before November. It'll have to go to trial in front of the district courts and then the appeals court, but it's always possible it can be elevated. But the legal theories here that it would have to come up with to come up with basically a stripping of the Democratic choice for president would be cockamamie at best. So where do we go from here? Well, vice president choice has to be made. Kamala Harris has to choose her next vice president. I think we'll see that by probably this time next week. So maybe that's what next week's Commissioner in a Car will be about. I think normally this takes longer, but because of that early roll call vote, I think the delegates are going to have to know who they're voting for. So it could be early next week. It could be early the week after, but definitely before August 7th and probably before August 1st. Because when they do that roll call vote, they have to do a roll call for both the presidential and vice presidential choosing. So I just did a post on my Facebook and Twitter socials to not looking at the top 4, as I believe them, to be nominees for vice president. That's Governor Andy Beshear, Governor of Kentucky, Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, and Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. I went through a brief, introduction of what they are. There's many other sites going into those, incredibly deep. My personal pick, I hope he picks, I think all 4 of them would be valuable picks and bring something to the ticket, but I like Senator Mark Kelly the best. I think it's an offensive pick, and it helps us go on offense in Nevada and Arizona. Although Josh Shapiro bringing home Pennsylvania would be very helpful as well. So that's being done. We'll see who she picks. Then once she picks the vice president, we'll have the roll call, and then the Democratic convention. Roll call early August, Democratic convention August 22nd. And then I think we'll start to see where the polls are. And I really believe, and I believe this throughout the entire cycle, that polls over the summer are junk. Polls right after big events are junk. What we need to see is what those polls say right after Labor Day. That's when we're really going to see where the race stands. And I don't see any way that this race is not going to be virtually tied, margin of error, 2 to 4 points on either side going into that fall election. Whether those polls are accurate or not, we'll see. We'll see. But I believe that that's what the race will be. And I think it's a winnable race by both sides. And it's the fight of our life. And just like every election seems to be. But we are seeing an enthusiasm we haven't seen in a while. So this is a good thing for Democrats. We're going to have to, see how this plays out. It's been, 72 hours since the decision? So less than 72 hours. 48 plus. I think it was like around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock Sunday that the decision to make it. Funny story. I was taking a nap. I never take naps, but I was part of the airport debacles over the weekend. I was supposed to come home Friday night. I didn't come home till Sunday morning. I wasn't sleeping very well for the extra 2 days that I was in Minnesota for the pledge conference. And but they took great care of me. The Caroline Lopez of the pledge conference, a partnership for large election jurisdictions, shout out to her. Not only was it a great conference, but she took care of everybody that got stuck in the Minneapolis airports because of the worldwide IT problem. And she was on it from the morning on Friday. She was really working her butt off. Her team was working her butt off, giving up hotel rooms, making sure that people could have a place to stay. Just, a lot of times these conventions end and they say, tough, you're out. But they were there taking care of everybody, and I just can't thank them enough. So I was taking a nap, and my phone starts blowing up, and that's when we got the news. So this is a historic occasion, something that we're always going to remember where we were when we got the news, and I know where I was in bed. So, it's been an interesting 48 hours, and it continues to be, and will be the rest of this 2024 general election. So, my content schedule got thrown off a little bit. I had a weekly wonk almost ready to go. I was going to finish it up Sunday evening, but with this news, I was on Twitter and on Facebook and doing other things, answering calls. So, however, my Zoom and Sarni schedule also got screwed up because my guests got delayed and we couldn't do our taping. So, you're going to get 2 weekly wonks this week. One on Thursday, a weekly wonk wrapping up the presidential primary, and then one on Sunday. That weekly wonk will be our first look at Onondaga County as a whole going into the general election, and very fitting as well. So, Thursday and Sunday, 2 weekly wonks. Next week, Commissioner in the Car. I'll again, I don't know what I'll be talking about. Probably talking about the vice presidential pick for the Democrats. And then on Friday, I hope to be back with the Commissioner in the Car. I believe I will be talking to Chris Ryan. Chris Ryan is Onondaga County Legislator. Chris Ryan next Friday. And we'll be talking about his race for Senate District 50. And I'm trying to get back onto my 3-a-week content schedule. 1 Commissioner in Car, 1 weekly wonk, 1 Zoom and Zarni every week going into the general election. We're 104 or 105 days away from the general election. So it's very important to get out there. Go to onvote.net to check your registration. Make sure you can update your registration right online, or request an absentee ballot or vote by mail ballot. All right. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day, and Godspeed. Presidential nominee Kamala Harris, our new standard bearer for the Democratic Party for this fall's election. Bye-bye.